Hi, Alexandra. Welcome to the Value Driven Marketing Podcast. So good to have you today.
Hi, Elena. Nice to be here too.
Very, very nice to be speaking to you as well. We've collaborated on content in the past, so it's a real pleasure to also talk. Alexandra, there's a question that I like to ask every guest on the podcast, and that is, what did you hope to become as a child? What was your dream job?
That's a funny one indeed. It's been a while since I thought about that. There's a funny story connected to that. And well, when I was a child, I actually wanted to be health minister or prime
Oh,
minister. I don't remember exactly which
big
one, but
dreams.
something like the health minister because I was a bit of a sicklish child. So, my parents were taking me a lot to doctors, and I was very much aware that, drugs can be expensive and that is not the doctor that decides which drug costs what. So my parents explained to me that, okay, look, actually it's the minister that decides that. So definitely I decided that I should be health minister, and give kids free medicines.
That's a beautiful story behind, actually, and I feel like you didn't necessarily end up like very far away from that, so you kind of stayed connected to the health industry in a way or another.
Well, yes, or I like to say that I wanted to have some influence and power. So definitely you have some influence when you're in marketing, right?
Yeah, yeah, you definitely do. So let's talk a bit about TenForce, and let's start with, what's your business model and who do you sell and market to? Because there are some things that are very specific to TenForce, and I want to go into that a little bit.
Yes, of course. So we are a software product company. We are
Mm-hmm.
automating the processes around environmental health and safety for mainly manufacturing companies. So our main audience is the chemical manufacturing one, but we also work with clients in the food and beverage sector, in fast-moving consumer goods, paper mills, and anything related to actually the production industry.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So a very niche, I would say, space. And manufacturing is always a complex space. I assume you also there are a ton of regulation that you have to be aware of. So I'm wondering, how is the specific of the business shaping the way you do marketing, and maybe what are some of the, let's say, constraints or guardrails that you have to work with.
So of course, it's not one of the most popular or well-known niches. And actually, before working for TenForce, I knew very little about it. But all of us, we are a little bit familiar with what it means to take care of the worker safety. Of course, for an office worker is different than for a worker on the plant, on the production plant. Our clients have to respect a lot of regulations.
Mhm.
They have to make sure not only that the workers are safe, but also that the environment is protected and the community around which they activate is safe. Um, this usually was done using pen and paper, so it was done since ever. I remember also my father, that was working for the railway system. They had these like huge log books to record what's happening in a shift. That's actually something that happens in any production plant still, but right now we are trying to digitalize that, because of course having the power of the digital world that will allow them to track the information better, to understand what's happening and to prevent any kind of incidents, because incidents in this world can be very costly in not only money but human life too. So
Mhm.
of course, when you deal with professionals that have this kind of responsibility, they are very attentive to detail. They are true professionals. They have a lot of industry knowledge. They have a lot of experience. um, they are close to the digital world. However, they would always want to double check, triple check, have all sorts of backup plans in place. So that's already some of the specific of our target audience, that we know that unless they know for sure what we are marketing, what we are doing, that we understand their processes, that they can trust us,
Mhm.
they will not buy from us.
So I guess trust is an important factor, and it starts with you somehow double checking everything and communicating very transparently, all that you do.
Yes, I
Mm-hmm.
would say that trust is one of the most important um, advantages when you're or making sure that you have a close relationship to your client, and establishing that trust is one of the most important aspects of dealing with this kind of industry and in this kind of business. And I think that's available, right, for like any B2B business or any B2B deal and understanding. It's a lot of trust involved. It's not something, it's a huge investment in time and money. So you have to make sure that you have the right partner for a long road.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I guess for you in particular, working in an enterprise level space, trust is even more important, and you deal with more people than maybe a B2B or SaaS that sells a license of a couple of dollars a month. So I guess it's trust, but at another level, and
Yes,
everything gets multiplied.
yes, of course. So we have quite a high average deal size. We also have a long sales cycle due to that.
Mm-hmm.
Our product is not the kind of the product that you will sell by just implementing a credit card payment system on the website. There are always multiple stakeholders involved, multiple decision makers. Sometimes we have an entire project team allocated to a client. We have to really understand their business and their processes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes total sense. And in the specific context of what you just told me of what is like working with TenForce's clients, can you walk me through how do you go about creating value for your clients, for your enterprise clients?
So I would say that it's always about mixing the digital ways with the real life and face-to-face channels, so to speak. Obviously, the COVID pandemic did throw a new element into this balancing act. But from the first moments when I worked at TenForce, I was surprised to see how much our clients spoke between each other. So
Mm-hmm.
mainly our customers were coming or they were active in the port of Antwerp here in Belgium. And they share a lot of knowledge between each other because again they have to make sure that everything runs safely, so they want to learn from each other. They are very open. That means
Yep.
that the relationship you establish with one of them will definitely affect the relationship you will establish with the rest. So I was hired initially as a digital marketing specialist, but very soon we were already doing like not only digital campaigns, of course, and we were promoting our product not only through like digital channels, but we were organizing face-to-face events in which one of our customers would actually talk about our product and present
Mm-hmm.
it to their neighbors, literally. So
Oh,
other
wow.
decision makers from other companies would come to these sessions and they would understand how they use their our product practically, but they would also
Mm-hmm.
understand and try to learn from each other and apply the best practices. So that was one of the tactics that worked the best, I would say. Of
Mm-hmm.
course,
Mm-hmm.
that meant that we had to work closely with the client that was willing to, promote us literally. And we had to make sure that our client is happy and that they are willing to invest the time to do that. But usually, indeed, I was surprised that this industry is so knit together.
Mm-hmm.
So that would
So
be one of the things.
yeah, so that's very interesting what you said, like customers becoming sort of evangelists. So I would assume that customer marketing is very important to you. And because you talked a bit about tactics, can we detail some more on some of the tactics that have paid off, for TenForce, and which ones bring the best or ROI for you today?
Yes. Well, just maybe as a little bit of a trick, I would say that, okay, you have to listen to your sales team. Even if
Mm-hmm.
as marketing people sometimes we don't like it, I would say that even from the beginning, that was one of the tactics that worked the best for me. They were sometimes pushy, of course, and they were saying, look, you have to do this, you have to do that, and you have to do that. So you just need a bit of prioritization and understanding with your management team. And then if you would start with what they recommend you to do, for example, these kind of events, they came as a recommendation from my sales team. And initially they started to organize it themselves. So that would be like a first trick. Listen to what your sales team is saying, take it with a grain of salt, discuss it with your management and with the sales management, and start there. So in the beginning, we were like just testing some stuff. We were maybe, spreading ourselves a bit thin, trying to do events, trying to do fairs, trying to do some email marketing, some paid ads. And we didn't have a lot of resources in terms of like human resources, but also not in terms of money. So TenForce is what I like to call some sort of a 20 years old startup. So it's a company that grew organically, but we always kept this kind of startup mentality. So we would always start, with the minimum viable product, even in terms of marketing. Try to allocate not limited resources, do some tests, and then see what works. So in the beginning, we did a lot of that. But of course, when you do that, sometimes you don't see concludent results. You would see like a sign here and a sign there. So then it
Mm-hmm.
was clear to me that we would have to go a bit more targeted. And that's how I introduced Stanforce to the concept of account based marketing, which is not something new, but in the past years, especially developed a lot. And it was funny because salespeople, and especially our sales manager and co founder, recognized it immediately as the way of sales. As the way of work of sales. So it was quite
Mm-hmm.
easy to introduce the concept. And the moment we started to focus on a set of named clients, it became easier for me to understand what's happening in an account, to better understand our target audience, to better understand the challenges of our salespeople, and of course of our clients too. And that was really what changed and a bit the game for us, because we also tried to and started to design our sales and marketing processes around this way of coping. I had a common language together with the sales team. It was not all easy, of course, because once you understand the kind of complexity you're dealing with and you want to run campaigns in sync with business development and with sales and also with management, and sometimes there are stakeholders on the client side. The
Mm-hmm.
real big challenge, I would say, for account based marketing is to synchronize these teams and to help them work in a logical way in order to you know get the results that you need. So
Mm-hmm.
streamlining all these teams and making sure that people collaborate together, it would be like the secret for account based marketing. So that's one of the tactics or like the methodologies that worked for us the best.
Mm-hmm. And you said a keyword here, and that is having the same language, which I think is super important. And I'm hoping that maybe you can share some tips on how marketers can best work with their sales colleagues, because I know this is a recurring theme. I personally used to work in sales. I didn't cooperate with marketing at all, which was a pity, I think. But I'm seeing this over and over, and it's a challenge. Do you have a few tips for other B2B marketers? How can they best work with their sales colleagues so that they deliver the most impact through marketing?
I would say that you have to balance focusing on the big picture and focusing on really those step by step actions. So,
Mm-hmm.
marketing people usually come, and that's how it should be, right? They come with the story, they want to focus on the big picture. They like to spend a lot of time planning and segmenting and showing, like, okay, we focus on this target audience and on this cohort and on this buyer persona. They would maybe spend too much time in doing like desk research to just describe this buyer persona, then in the end will not give the necessary detail that a
Mm-hmm.
salesperson needs. Will give all other details but just not what they need. So that would be the big difference between these two teams. Like marketing likes to focus on the story and the big picture, while sales is very much driven by step action, because they actually have a quota to fulfill. They are much more
There's a
connected to the
pressure
revenue,
there.
right? So what account
Hmm.
based marketing does brings marketing closer to the reality of the account and closer to the impact on the revenue. For example, I would say that one of my main metrics would be open opportunities, even for marketing, although traditionally, right, it's more of a sales metric.
So yeah.
So that's in this way. And then you have to listen to your account manager. And a lot of times the challenge is that, you almost is the sales account manager would be the one to define the strategy for that account. So you have to
Because
make
they know
sure
the
that the right
client.
person is in place, because if not, your marketing person would not always know exactly what's happening there in order to choose the angle, to choose the right strategy. So the input from the sales team becomes super important. And when
Hmm.
salespeople feel listened to and they see that, there are open deals on their name, and then there is this account that came in through the efforts that we did together, of course, then it works. If we do some sort of, how to put it, 1.0 account based marketing. So we don't work a lot with intent data, but I think if you do that and you can even show to your sales team, look, these are the accounts that are actually on the market to look for a solution like ours, that
Hmm.
becomes even more valuable. For us, we have these big accounts, so working inside them and developing them is more important at the moment. But at some moment, we'll have to go also there to look at the market and to see, okay, who's in the market for a solution like this.
So, Alexandra, you mentioned how ABM has really been working well for TenForce, how sales saw value right away, and it helped you focus your energy and efforts into one direction. And I think it makes sense when you're selling to enterprise. There are a limited number of accounts that represent your potential market. So, can we talk a bit about also, the channels that bring the best ROI for you today?
Yes, honestly, those channels are events, very niche events that we
Mm-hmm.
organize for a very specific segment of our target audience, and email marketing. Just because, we are quite close to our target audience, so they are in our database. We do have some issues sometimes with these big accounts because you will be stopped by firewalls, and sometimes our emails don't land well and all this. But honestly, the events that we are organizing on very specific topics that are of clear interest to our audience, they always bring not high volume of people, but people that would be interested in what we're doing and that they follow up with us. And email marketing,
Mm-hmm.
just because, as I said, it's our direct channel of communication, something that did not bring that many results, although it allows us to see a lot of buying intent would be something like paid ads on LinkedIn. So, of course, you can target very well your target accounts. But for us, it did not bring that many conversions. However, it allowed us to see where the interest is. So, and then we followed that up with, you know, um, emails, with invitations to events. And also, if we're here talking about channels, I think we cannot forget about the outbound channel. That still today in the B2B world,
Mm-hmm.
outbound and business development is one of the most prolific channels, because especially our audience needs personal contacts. They need a phone call, they need to talk to a real person, and they need to then understand what we're doing. Now, this is not the case for all companies. Of course, the more you manage to map this buyer journey and to help them along the way with in a digital way, sure, then you will see more impacts from your inbound. But for us, there is a clear moment somewhere around interest, even not even evaluation, where the outbound team has a very clear impact. Like they will read our materials, they will navigate through our website, sure,
Mm-hmm.
but the human to human interaction still has a very big impact.
And Alexandra, you mentioned a bit earlier about how one of the key metrics you look at is open deals.
Hmm.
So I'm hoping we can speak a bit more about how do you measure essentially the marketing's impact on revenue.
Okay, so in terms of metrics, we have two very simple ones that we're tracking. They are so simple that sometimes it's like you forget about them. For us, it's always the number of contacts created and
Mm-hmm.
number of open deals, so opportunities created. That's because we are operating, focus more on the account. So the number of marketing qualified leads and sales qualified leads, sometimes of course, it's relevant. But if you would look at, do we have enough people we're talking to and enough open deals, then that gives a very good indication about the success of our marketing and sales efforts. In order to understand the impact of marketing on sales, we are a small company, or a small medium company right now, and a small sales and marketing team, about 10 to 15 people, becoming more very soon. So we don't need to formalize very much, this process. But
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
however, something that I do is I'm tracking, of course, the requests that come through the website. I associate them to the right target accounts, and then we are also looking at the implication of the inside sales representative. We call them business development representatives, but in other companies would be something that you call inside sales. Usually, we count that
Mm-hmm.
as coming from marketing. So in our
Mm-hmm.
case specifically, so if because our salespeople are also developing their own deals, so for us, if there's been an inside sales representative involved in the creation of that deal, that means marketing had an impact too.
Mm-hmm.
That is
Mm-hmm.
because our inside sales are also partially under marketing.
Okay, okay, that's interesting. But I love the simplicity. I think, yeah, keep it super simple. And I think, as you said, it's really on par with where you are as a team size. So as you grow, probably things will also change a bit on the KPIs. But I love the simplicity, and I think it gives you a good overview of, what revenue marketing has driven, how many deals you've impacted, and so on. So I think, yeah, I absolutely love the simplicity.
Yes, of course. So, in terms of what I call website requests, it was easier before because, of course, we were focusing mainly on like free trial requests and demo requests. Now we start to create more events, to have more webinar subscriptions, to see people subscribing to watch one of our product videos. So, we will have to start, differentiating between that. So, what I would recommend, for example, is like pick one of your offers on your website. In our case, it was free trials and demo requests. And I knew that if an account had a conversion on one of those two calls to action, then of course marketing had an implication. But as I said, since we don't have a huge team, we also don't have to show like, okay, how much percent and all that.
And could you try maybe look back to, I don't know, a few mistakes that you've made along the way, and what learnings did you extract from those mistakes?
So although at TenForce we don't deal with huge volumes, we do deal with quite complex deals, and it with big companies that we are marketing to. So I think one of the first mistakes that I did was to spread the marketing efforts a bit too thin, because this gives you the
Mm-hmm.
impression that you have to target this group of buyers or like decision makers and this group, and you have to do an event and then a fair and then some paid ads and all this, while actually the requests or like the needs of our customers would have been a lot more simple. They would have a lot of times, I discover like 1 or 2 years later, I think that look, actually they just want to see the product, which sounds very simple. And of course we knew, but in the beginning I was not that much focused on this.
Mm-hmm.
So after that, we our strategy focused very much on like, look, we want to show our product and how it works as quick as possible, and then we will win their trust. So don't spread yourself too thin. Just focus on like one or two tactics. Of course, it will take some time until you learn which are those tactics that are really relevant for your audience. Then talk to your sales team and discover which are those needs of your clients, and take their recommendations. So that would be one mistake. And the second mistake was to maybe don't not push early enough for like better tools in marketing. So we were struggling a lot with migration between CRMs. We were still struggling with finding a product that will offer us this holistic view of what's happening in an account.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So when you work on these complex deals, you really need to understand what's happening on all levels. So separating, the marketing tools and the sales tools is not a good idea. But in the beginning, I said like, sure, we can deal with less, or like we can do this through Excel and we can do that through the CRM only. So I would say invest in tools that would show you the complete picture and will allow you to run the right reports, and that will allow you to automate follow up, because in this kind of big complex accounts, follow up becomes very important, by even if it's done by marketing or by sales. So getting those alarm signals soon enough that, look, this account is not properly followed up, or there's been no conversation in a while, you will understand exactly also why a deal is lost or won, or why it's not progressing. So investing in those tools that will help you see that, even though you think you should check it, and even though you trust your team, a lot of details can get lost. So making sure that you have that kind of visibility. I think even now, if we go back and we look at our past deals, we would discover a percentage of them that, they went a bit slower than they should
Mm-hmm.
have, or maybe they were even lost because not the right amount of attention was given, because people get busy, of course. So
Also talk a bit about some of the challenges that you've encountered working in this environment where you have a long sales cycle, also complex one. Maybe it relates to the question with mistakes, but maybe we can also identify. So, what would you say are the top, I don't know, a couple of top challenges you've faced?
So I would say that when you deal with such a long sales cycle, very quickly you start looking at marketing like some sort of surround system, what I call,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
because it's difficult to really connect a marketing campaign to a clear result or to a clear closed deal, especially as you're growing. And again, you maybe don't have all the tools needed for that. And in my experience, I noticed that not even all the tools will resolve that, of
So,
course.
yeah.
And then when you treat marketing as just a surround system, um, you might neglect some aspects, some channels. You might neglect actually the real impact that it has. You might focus on those tactics actually that are focused more towards the end of the funnel, and not enough on the ones beginning of the funnel. You might not invest enough in branding, which I believe that it's very important in the B2B sector, and making sure that you communicate the culture of your company also outside, because we are very good to communicate and to share this kind of TenForce personality with our customers and very close prospects, but very little to the people that are not yet, in the later stages of the funnel. So that was something that, for example, I did not focus enough on. And then you're focusing on, like, just putting out fires, just making sure that you drive some registrations through certain offers to the website. We focused a lot on building the processes actually. So
Mm-hmm.
sometimes we were getting lost into, okay, how does the process look like? And then you realize that, okay, I was focusing on the process so much that I'm not communicating again enough outside of the company. And that's when you get lost a bit in details when you deal with this long sales cycle, because it's more difficult to see the result from A to Z. Therefore, you will focus on all these different layers. So, yeah, spreading yourself a
Mm-hmm.
bit too thin.
Yeah, I think that's a big challenge for many other marketing teams, and I think processes, what you mentioned, even though they seem to, that takes time, but I think it's a foundational step that you have to take, because if you don't, then you scale, and I think processes are going to come back and bite you. And uh,
Yes, of course. I mean, it's very good that we did that now that I'm looking back. But of course, I also see those moments when I was personally, maybe I found this work a bit too cumbersome, and it was
mhm,
taking a bit
mhm,
away from that creativity that you would use to create those marketing campaigns that will have a bit more impact. So sometimes you can get lost on working on the process, and then, do a little too like less communication outside. So that, but us being a small team, of course, we always had the challenge of balancing this. But
Mm-hmm.
right now, for example, I'm looking at what we built for account-based marketing and sales, and I'm quite proud to be able to see how we just have to build upon it, so we don't have to, destroy it, start from scratch. No, actually, it's a very good foundation in that. You're very right.
Um, and Alexandra, because you spoke a bit about the future, so you mentioned that. I would like to ask you, how do you
Yes.
see, growth at TenForce, and what marketing levers are you pulling to get there?
Yes, so as I said, because we did not focus on branding a lot in the past, we will try to make sure that our story gets a bit more out in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So we will make sure that this Tenforce culture and personality and what makes us different, actually, it's a bit better communicated. That's why I will have some help in the team with some digital marketing specialists and copywriters. So we will work on that. I will also want to make sure that we don't focus too much on these very big events, or like even big trade fairs, but we will actually focus more on the niche events organized by us that, target very specific topics that our audience is interested in, that we let our audience experiment with our product, that they can actually test it, that they can interact with it. That will be also something we are looking at, but of course that depends not only of the marketing department. And yes, actually making sure that we really are up to date with these topics that are delivering value to our clients. So we did
Mm-hmm.
this a bit instinctively as a team, but right now I would like to, um, I don't like the word, but I will use it, to standardize it a bit, to put it in a framework, to map it to the funnel, and to really see how, delivering on that also helps speeding up the sales process and shortening the sales cycle practically.
Mhm. Which I think is really some of the key areas where marketing, can do a good job. Like, you've done your job if the sales cycle is shorter, then it means you've prepared those potential clients and equipped them with everything they know, so that when they actually speak to a salesperson, they know what to ask, and they know, it's the right tool.
Yes, so mapping the interests of our target audience, understanding how we can deliver value, and connecting that to how we can actually indeed achieve also our objectives will be my main objective for the future, for the next months and the next years. But as I said, we must not forget, because sometimes when you work in this account based marketing way, you focus a lot on communicating this to your target accounts. And this has always to be doubled down with branding efforts. So I would
Mm-hmm.
say if you work with extremely targeted tactics, campaigns, and communication in your ABM strategy, but you also invest in creating this picture and communicating who you are to the rest of the world, I would say that, okay, nothing can stop you. Of course, it's hard to do it in practice, but it's practically the way forward.
Mm-hmm. So keep some time and space for branding, as well as this will, pave the way for the future.
Yes, and I think a challenge for marketeers, especially in the B2B area, is that it's hard to sell branding
So the
sometimes, because it's
management.
one of the hardest aspects to relate to ROI in a short term.
Mm-hmm.
And also because the sales team has the impression, and they are not necessarily wrong, that they can build this trust with one-on-one interaction. And of course, we know that if you have a strong brand, your inbound funnel will increase in volume, and then it will give, and everybody knows this in theory. But in practice, when you have to put the money, the effort, and the time, you will always be tempted to put it in the later stages of the funnel and to see quicker results. And then it will be more difficult to do that on the branding and awareness side.
Alexandra, I do have one final question. If maybe you can give a couple of recommendations to other B2B marketers who work in a similar context as yourself, so companies with complex sales cycle, what would your top recommendations be?
So indeed, my top recommendation for B2B marketers would be: one, talk to your sales team, talk to your customer success representatives if you have them. If not, talk to any person that interacts with the customer. It's a mistake that I also did. Speaking of mistakes, that of course I was working quite closely to the sales team, so I always had the impression that I know, but at points I could have come closer to the client. And then don't just go, on the internet and look top B2B tactics to try today. Just listen to them, and they will tell you that they need this white paper, or that they need this event, or that they need this material on that topic. And usually, like just recently, I listened to one of our salespeople and organized a certain webinar, and it was one of the best performing webinars because he knew what the audience wanted. It was not
Mm-hmm.
just because, I had this huge flash of inspiration. So listen to your colleagues and your clients. That would be, and try to do that in a consistent manner, but
Mm-hmm.
don't waste time in creating the perfect framework for this, because I was also tempted to say, like, okay, I need this table in which everybody needs to input their findings. And no, sometimes, you just have to pick up an idea and find the right priority, have an idea. So for us, it was also connected, with our overall strategy of showing the product, show everything. So then I always check the recommendations of our sales team against that, and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
against our objectives. But as I said, listen to your sales colleagues, the customer success reps. If you go to events. Don't always send your sales team. So try to also do like one or two
Absolutely.
fairs. Do smaller fairs, for example, where you can actually interact with your target audience, and you can actually talk to the VP of I don't know what company you want to target, and it will deliver a lot of value for your marketing strategy.
Absolutely amazing. Awesome. Alexandra, thank you so much for being here today. I'm sure everyone listening will definitely walk away with some new ideas and insights. So thanks a lot for, being here and being open. Thank you so much.
Thank you too. It was a really nice opportunity.